Now here's your host, Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage.
Ooh, yeah!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports and Metal Podcast. We are your hosts. This is Aaron Savage. With me, as always, my partner in crime, right over there, Mr. Jason Voorhees, and we have a very exciting show for you tonight. But before we get started, I want to give a special shout-out to our sponsors. First and foremost, longtime sponsor La Terrain Watches. Make sure you visit their website, www.la-touraine.com. Use our promo code SNM. That's the letters SNM as in Sports and Metal. Tell them Sports and Metal sent you, and you're going to save 10% off your purchase. I also want to give a shout out to our newest sponsor, BetUS. Make sure you visit their website. Use the link that I have below me right here, and you're going to get 125% bonus in free bets. Use our Sports and Metal link. So special shout out to BetUS. Check them out. So let's get started without further ado. I think the biggest thing in the news this week as far as metal goes is the Pantera reunion tour is underway. They've played a couple shows in Mexico. In case you've been living in a bubble, it's Zakk Wylde on guitar, Charlie Benante on the drums from Anthrax, and they're joining Pantera members Philip Anselmo on the vocals and Rex Brown on the bass guitar. A lot of people, when this was first announced, were like, oh, how are you going to have a Pantera reunion without Vinny and Dime? But most people were like, wow, this is freaking awesome. And everybody involved, as far as Phil, Rex, and most importantly, Zach and Charlie, are all saying this isn't a Pantera reunion per se, even though they are touring under the name Pantera. It's a tribute. And it's not just a one-off show, it's a tour. So a lot of people are like, oh, I can understand a one-off tribute show, but I don't know about a tour. But like I said, the guys involved in it are saying it's a tribute tour. And I couldn't be more excited, dude. And I've watched some of the video on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Blabbermouth, Loudwire, all the sites posting YouTube videos of the shows down in Mexico. And they sound freaking awesome, Jay. Have you had a chance to check out any video the Pantera shows?
I did, and I really like, not to piggyback off your point, but to me, I think it's asinine that people are against this. Like, to me, yes, it's a tribute, and like, why wouldn't you want the music to live on? Like, I get it. Nobody's saying that we're replacing Dimebag. I mean, it's the same thing that we've talked about with Van Halen. Like, should Van Halen have a tribute? And I absolutely think they should. Like, 100%. Nobody is going to replace Eddie Van Halen. We get that. Nobody will. Nobody, ever. But his son actually plays phenomenal and would be a great testament. And if there was anybody that would be able to have a tribute, it would be him included. So I don't get why people are against these things. Like, to me, it's like, I want to hear this stuff. And if it sounds great, who cares? I mean, to me, at the end of the day, yes, you'll never replace Dimebag Darrell. You'll never replace Vinny. But they passed away, unfortunately. I mean, it's sad, but people do pass away. I mean, people get sick. I mean, how many musicians have we lost in the last year? Just alone in the last year. It's insane, the amount of numbers of people we're losing every single year. But what are we supposed to say? Oh, just stop playing the music? We don't want to hear it anymore? I think it's asinine. I'm sorry to get frustrated, but I see people saying it, and it's like, who cares? Like, nobody's saying it's Dimebag. We get that. But Zakk Wylde actually is a great guitarist on his own.
And he's the next best thing. He was best friends with Dime. Who better than to pay tribute to Dime than Zakk? It's a perfect fit. And again, just because people pass away, does that mean the world should be deprived of the great music they gave us while they were here? That bothers me. I just think the metal community, I've talked about it before on this podcast, I think the metal community is probably the most divisive community within itself of any genre of music. You know what I mean? And what other genre of music does everyone have such a strong opinion? Everybody attacks other bands. We're one big community, man. Seriously. This isn't like the 80s where metal was at the forefront of popularity You know, and you had your thrash scene, and they hated the glam guys, and the glam guys hated the thrash guys, and the hardcore guys hated the punk guys, and the punk guys hated the hard. You know, you could get away with it back then, but metal's kind of been pushed back to the underground overall. Back then, you had underground metal scenes, like your hardcore scenes, you know, your death metal scenes, and you had your mainstream metal scenes. There's really no mainstream at this point for metal. So why are we all fighting with each other? Let's just fucking enjoy the music that was given to us and the music that we'll get in the future from whoever's here to give it to us. And the bottom line is, I want to see a Pantera tour. I want to see a Pantera show. My biggest criticism would be that Phil doesn't sound as good as he used to. Not that I care that, you know, there's Charlie and Zach touring with him. My bigger complaint would be I want to hear Phil sound great like he used to on Cowboys from Hell.
And to that point, he doesn't sound terrible. Like,
he actually sounds better than I've heard in a long time.
And this is where it's like, dude, I love Charlie Benante. I've been a huge fan. I mean, obviously, I'm an Anthrax guy. You know, they're my genre. I'm a thrash guy. I have not seen Charlie Benante this excited and happy. He looks almost like revived. And I'm not saying he hasn't had fun in Anthrax, but he almost looks like the Charlie Benante that I used to watch in the 80s on those videos when Anthrax would be like playing Antisocial and you'd see freaking Charlie Benante going insane.
Well, he definitely looks like he's enjoying the hell out of it. It's an honor for
him. He's posting everywhere on Facebook, on Instagram, even on Twitter. Like, he's all over the place. And like, I like that excitement. To me, it's exciting. We don't have a lot to be excited about. And as you said, in the metal community, it's like, we're always like, it seems like we're always fighting and arguing. It's like, dude, let's just have fun. I mean, I went to that show, you know, a couple weeks back, the Wasp Armored Saint show, and it's phenomenal. I'm just loving these old school, you know, metal guys, you know, coming back. To me, it's like a comeback and a revival. And I'm not saying it's going to help metal, but for a guy like me, I mean, we're the same age. To me, it's exciting. I want to see.
It's awesome.
There's not much to get excited about in the new metal bands. There's really not. Like, I haven't had a new metal band smack me in the ass or smack me in the head in forever. I mean,
it's definitely anything you can get excited about is a good thing. And to the point, we're all like, it's the metal community is so divisive, obviously. So, but beyond that, it's like the world is such a shitty place sometimes. Why not enjoy the escape of seeing a band that you loved? Why complain that somebody's replacing a guy who's not even here to play? Like, it's not like Vinny and Dime can come back to life and do a Pantera tour. So enjoy the fact that there are some people here that will do it, can do it, love the original players, are paying tribute to them, not saying that they're replacing them, and we get to see this tour that we would never have thought we'd be able to see. I think it's so fucking awesome. It's so great. And Phil does sound better than I've heard him sound in quite a long time, dude. He really does. And I'm super excited to hopefully see the show. We were talking about getting tickets to see Metallica at MetLife Stadium in Jersey, and Pantera is going to be opening the Friday show, and I really would look forward to seeing that. What do we got a commenter here? Hey guys, they are amazing group. He's happy with life. Absolutely. I think we're talking about Charlie here being happy with life. But yeah, Pantera's freaking awesome. Thank you for the comment. But dude, I'm super stoked. I couldn't be more excited about the reunion. And while we're talking about Pantera, Jay, I did, because we were going to talk about this, I did a poll on Twitter. What is your favorite Pantera album featuring Philip Anselmo on vocals? Was the poll I ran. You know what? I haven't checked to see what the final verdict on that was. So let's check right now what we had here for this. Hold on, Jay. While I'm looking here, what is your favorite Pantera album, with or without Phil, for that matter? What is your favorite Pantera album?
So, for me, the apex for Pantera, for me personally, is the Cowboys from Hell album. I know that Vulgar Display of Power is probably the one that's going to win the poll. I think Vulgar Display of Power is probably the album that realistically, it was their signature album, so to speak, but I still love I don't want to say old school, but the old school metal elements that you see in Cowboys. I think Vulgar Display of Power was more so of a more.
You think it was more? I'm going to think you're going to say more
I was
representative of
trying
who
to
they
think of
were.
the word, a more modern, play of what they were getting at in their music, like where they ended up as far as being that because I really didn't think Pantera ever pigeonholed themselves into a certain era. Like they almost made their own.
Well, yeah, they definitely lived. Well, that's why their fourth album with Phil was called The Great Southern Trendkill. Pantera existed outside of trends. Pantera did what they wanted to do and constantly got heavier, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
there it is. It's all in the name.
So I mean, but I guess for me, the reason I still love Cowboys from Hell is because I still see the '80s style music that they had in their previous, era when they were
Just to clarify, what was your favorite album with Phil? Was it Cowboys or Vulgar?
Cowboys. Cowboys.
I apologize. I thought you said Vulgar. My
No, I
mistake.
said Cowboys, but I
Okay.
said I think Vulgar is probably going to win the poll.
I was looking up the poll results when you were saying it. I kind of got distracted. Well, let's look at the poll results here. Cowboys from Hell. Actually, so the question was, what's your favorite Pantera album with Philip Anselmo on vocals? I had Cowboys from Hell, Far Beyond Driven, and A Vulgar Display of Power as the three choices. I had the fourth choice of Other. Because obviously we have all the stuff pre-Phil, which wouldn't have been included in this poll. But we have the other Phil albums, Power Metal, which was the first album with Phil. And then we had Reinventing the Steel and Great Southern Trendkill. But Cowboys, Far Beyond Driven, and Vulgar Display of Power are typically recognized as the most popular Phil albums. Cowboys won the poll with 57% of the vote. So there you go, Jay. I was actually shocked at that. I'm with you. I thought Vulgar was going to win the poll. Vulgar came in second with 26%. Far Beyond Driven came in third with 17%. Nobody voted Other, which I found shocking too. I'm surprised not one vote for Reinventing the Steel or Great Southern Trendkill or Power Metal, which was the first album with Phil. My favorite of these choices, Cowboys, Far Beyond Driven, and Vulgar, I might go Vulgar. I love Cowboys from Hell, but Vulgar, I think was, again, more representative of the band that they would become, but it was before they got as extreme. It was kind of like a balance between what they were prior and what they were going to be after. It was like the perfect storm, that Pantera record. Mouth for War, Kicks Ass. They still had some ballads on there, like Hollow and This Love, which is so freaking heavy.
I was just going to say, so while Cowboys from Hell is my favorite album, my favorite track of all time is Hollow. And I love Cemetery Gates.
I love This Love.
But Hollow to me is I just, knowing what that song was about, that he wrote it about, seeing his friend dead, that to me just almost it's chilling knowing how Dime, ends up dying. And I just, not only is it chilling, just hearing that song, it's very haunting. It has my God, it's just, and you're right. This Love is
This Love to me is just so powerful. The mellow verses, but so filled with angst. And then just that power. You take this love, first love. Oh, my God. I mean, what a breakup fucking song, man. Oh, my God. What a song. But that being said, I go back to, I was shocked nobody picked any other record. I love the Power Metal album, which was the first album with Phil. Unfortunately, it never received a major label release. It's hard to get. You're not going to be able to stream it on Amazon or anything. You've got to find a hard copy. But it was dude, it was the best Judas Priest album that Judas Priest never made. That was the first album that featured Philip Anselmo on vocals. Now, if you know the history of Pantera, they had a number of albums. I Am the Night, Metal Magic. Previous to Phil joining the band, Pantera's albums date back to 1984 when Dime was 16 years old. Terry Glaze was their original vocalist. If you haven't checked out early Pantera, I highly recommend it. It's definitely more on the glam edge. Yeah, I hear a lot of Def Leppard influence in the early Pantera with Terry Glaze, but you already heard the greatness of Dime on those early records, and he had that real Van Halen influence. Awesome stuff. But the first album with Phil, Power Metal, was still had a little bit of that glam to it, but heavy. It was Power Metal is the transitional record of all transitional records as far as Pantera goes. It was the bridge, because it was not a glam record, but not a groove metal record. It
It's
was
a shame
literally a
that
Judas Priest record.
it's a
It was
shame
literally a
that
Judas Priest record.
it's a shame that they can't release it now as like a as a
Like
release.
on a major label, remaster it and put it out on a major label.
Because you're
But,
right, I agree with you.
Diamond Vinny never wanted to do it, and I know Phil wouldn't do it. Phil, even if Diamond Vinny signed off on it, Phil wouldn't do it. I don't know how much pull Phil would have. I think Diamond Vinny's estates probably have more pull, but Phil wouldn't do it because Phil tries to deny and bury all of his previous vocal prowess. You're never going to hear Phil hit a falsetto vocal again. Not that he's even capable of doing it. From all the screaming over the years, he's definitely blown his voice out, and the drugs and smoking. But I mean, dude, you listen to power metal and even the Cowboys from Hell. Philip Anselmo had a voice like Rob Halford. One of my favorite songs is a track that was later released as a bonus track on Cowboys from Hell, The Will to Survive. It has a sped up part of this Love's riff in it. Whatever. But Phil's vocal is insane. It is insane. And it's like the reason they didn't include that song on Cowboys was because it was kind of like one of the first tracks they wrote in the Cowboys from Hell sessions. So obviously they had been out touring power metal and they started working on the Cowboys stuff. And, it was definitely a song that more harkened back to the power metal sound, even though it was a much better song than anything that was on power metal. So they decided to keep it off the record. Vulgar Display of Power is my favorite Pantera album. We have a commenter here. Excellent choice. Honorable mention to the Great Southern Trendkill. Well, there you go. But yeah, power metal, the Will to Survive was kind of like a transitional track between power metal and Cowboys. So they left it off Cowboys, but it was later released as a bonus track. And if you check it out, it's awesome. But you still had some of that high vocal stuff on Cowboys, like Shattered, Cemetery Gates. To me, on the chorus, he has like a real Bruce Dickinson sound. But then at the end, he hits those Rob Halford notes. Yes! When Dime's hitting those harmonics on the guitar. But you're never going to see power metal released on a major label because Pantera has just buried it. Which is a shame. I mean, I know they definitely would never release the Terry Glaze stuff. Absolutely not. Hell no. But I wish they'd at least consider releasing power metal, their estates, on a major label because it would be a real collectible. Everybody would love that. Just checking out some commenters here. But yeah, I mean, so the poll voted Cowboys. What were you saying, Jay?
No, I think Kyle mentions honorable mention to Great Southern Trendkill. I think that's an album that's slept on. The more I've listened to it, there's some phenomenal stuff on that album. I mean,
I'm going to be honest with you. I like Reinventing the Steel a lot more than Trendkill. Trendkill's definitely my least favorite Phil record. I like it, but it's my least favorite Phil record. But I like Reinventing the Steel, which actually didn't get the credit, But what were you saying, Jay? I apologize.
The funny thing is, the Great Southern Trendkill was actually the first Pantera. It was the first full album that I listened to. I was actually on a hunting trip in South Carolina. This was like 20 years ago.
I'm shocked that's the album that opened the doors to Pantera for you.
A hick was dry. Like they call him guides. He was the guide. He was showing me where to go, like for my hunting trip, and he was jamming Great Southern Trendkill, and actually he was jamming the song Great Southern Trendkill, and I was like, dude, who the hell is that? And he was like, Pantera, and that was like for me my initiation.
I'm shocked that's the album that you first heard Pantera. I would have. I mean, Pantera was already.
I know, but don't forget that my musical. Don't forget, I was kind of a late bloomer into kind of going to different genres. Remember, I was basically all I listened to was thrash. And,
I will say this: we haven't talked about Far Beyond Driven. One of my favorite Pantera songs is 5 Minutes Alone. Unfreaking real, and I love I'm Broken. I love the video for I'm Broken where they're all just standing in a circle. We got a commenter, Kyle, here again. My two favorite Pantera songs are Walk and Floods.
Can't go wrong.
Everybody loves the guitar solo for Floods. So I mean, the guitar solo for Floods has been voted in a lot of publications as one of the greatest guitar solos of all time. But anyway, while we're kind of on a Pantera kick and we're kind of talking about vulgar display of power, there's been a vulgar display of power by a few major league franchises this past week. And more than ever, it just seems like there's a big discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots in Major League Baseball. And there's no question that there's been a real vulgar display of power by some of the big market teams as far as spending goes. None more than the New York Mets, who I'm a Mets fan, but their payroll is obscene, Jay. They when they came out with the new luxury tax, the third tier, whatever that is, I think it's $298 million. They call it the Steve Cohen tax. If you don't know, Steve Cohen is the Mets owner. They call it the Steve Cohen tax because he's so filthy rich that all the other owners were scared that he was just going to spend crazily and bury everybody else. So they created what they call the Steve Cohen tax at that number. So basically, anything over that number, you're paying 90 cents on the dollar in the luxury tax. So I think the Mets payroll projects right now at $330 million. So he's $32 million over that threshold, which means for $32 million of the Mets payroll, he's paying 90 cents on the dollar in the luxury tax. So for $330 million payroll, it's basically like a $362 million payroll, whatever it is. Dude, it's insane. But the Mets aren't the only ones. The Phillies, my goodness, you signed Bryce Harper. You brought in Zach Wheeler. Now you signed Trey Turner. The Padres, where are the Padres getting all this freaking money? You got a 10-year deal to Tatis. You got a 10-year deal to Manny Machado. Now you just signed Xander Bogaerts. You traded for Juan Soto. The Dodgers have signed everybody in the world. And meanwhile, you hear it's kind of a sad state when you have free agency and you don't hear word one about the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Minnesota Twins, yada, 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 yada. Dude, you have like 5 to 10 teams. And when I say 10, I'm probably going high end, that are literally just like the only players in town for these big money guys. And while we're at it, while we're talking about vulgar displays, the money that these players are getting is obscene. It's disgusting. It's vulgar. Dude, you got middle relievers making $15 million a year. I love Brandon Nimmo, but the Mets just signed Brandon Nimmo for an 8-year contract, $162 million. $20 million a year for a guy that only had 550 at-bats once in his career. Never had 500 at-bats before this past year. Not once. At $20 million. And now that we're talking about all the money getting thrown around, let's talk about analytics for a minute. Because I just pointed out that Brandon Nimmo has 1 year with 500-plus at-bats. But yet, all you do online is read how his WAR is almost the same as Bryce Harper's. I don't know one person that watches baseball that's going to tell me Brandon Nimmo is as good as Bryce Harper. But if you're going by WAR, he is. I can go in. That's a whole different conversation. But the money's obscene. It's absurd, Jay. Trey Turner, $11 million, $330 million, 11 years. And they just gave Bryce Harper $300 million. Everybody's getting $300 million now. What are we doing, Jay?
Jeez, Aaron's ready to have a stroke on live
crazy. TV. The money getting thrown around is crazy.
Oh, it is absolutely mind-boggling. But I mean, you're talking about the iceberg there. You're talking about the teams that are spending. But to me, it's absolutely disgusting that these small market teams are allowed to not spend. I think there should be a rule.
There's something you make a great point. I'm going to let you go. But let me say one thing while I'm thinking of it. You make a sick point, an excellent point. We're talking about the Steve Cohen tax. So if Steve Cohen is paying 90 cents on the dollar when he's over that tax threshold, see, this is the difference. Like, I was always a Yankee hater for their payroll, but the difference when the Yankees were doing it, they would have a $200 million payroll when the next highest payroll was like $100 million. Now you have a number of teams that are having like ridiculous payrolls, the Mets, the Phillies, the Dodgers, a number of teams. It's not just the Mets. But the Mets are the highest right now, but they're paying a tax that's never existed before. So if they're willing to spend it, more power to them because they're getting taxed on it. So where's all this tax money going? These teams need to spend this money. This tax money gets put into a pool for smaller market teams to spend. At least to my knowledge, it does. I have to go back and look at how it all works, but this obviously is tax money that gets pooled in Major League Baseball.
And this is why I think there's such a disparity in the haves and have-nots. And it, to me, if you don't fix that and you don't make a minimum threshold that teams have to spend, they're going to continue not spending it, these small market teams, because why would they? They're not getting
100%.
penalized. So if you're going to penalize the Mets and the Phillies and whoever else goes over, then why not? Why can't you penalize the other teams if they don't spend more? Because that's what's bullshit.
100%.
It's almost like these owners on those teams are just saying they're just packing their bags. They're not even going to the winter meetings. They're just down there golfing at,
It seems like it. You would think,
or,
yeah.
maybe they're in Costa Rica selling drugs. I don't know what they're doing, but honestly, to me, that's where I look at it as a fan, and I say it's kind of disgraceful because yes, while I'm happy, I'm a Phillies fan and you're a Mets fan. So while we're reaping the benefits of that, I still look at the whole product as a whole, and it's really going backwards. And I think we've already talked about it. We've had numerous shows where we've went on these rants about the state of pitching and all the analytics and all the bullshit rule changes and all that yada yada yada. But what about the product that's on the field besides these few select teams that are spending all the money to have that talent? Because sooner or later, you're not going to have those Miami Marlin type teams, because sooner or later, these teams that are continuing spending, eventually talent wins out. I mean,
100%. Once in a blue moon, you'll have your Cinderella team. That's
exactly, but you're never going to see that anymore because now you're
case in point. When's the last time the Reds competed or the Pirates? You have teams that have just been buried, and the Reds are the oldest franchise in Major League Baseball. They're a great historic franchise. They were a dynasty in the 70s. It's a shame that you don't even think of the Reds as a team that's going to compete. You make a great point. Dude, the Miami Marlins are not the norm. They're an outlier. They won those 2 World Series out of nowhere and then completely dismantled those teams and went back into oblivion. But you have teams, and the Rays are kind of an outlier. Somehow the Rays, I don't know how they do it. They do it with mirrors. They compete every year. But for the most part, these teams that have no payroll, they never compete. You have the same teams at the top of the divisions year after year. The Cardinals, every year you could just write them in to win the division in the NL Central, or at least be a wild card. The Cardinals are a perennial playoff team. The NL East, the Braves have really dominated it over the last 2 decades, but that's more of a credit to when they, in the 90s, having the pitching that they had and the way they drafted. But it's not, you can't compare the NL East to some of these other divisions because you have big market teams in these Eastern divisions, right? In the AL East, you have the Yankees, the Red Sox, Mets, Phillies in the NL East, the Braves. These teams spend money. But when you have these Midwestern divisions, the Twins, like in the NL Central, AL Central, these are teams that play in markets that don't bring in the revenue of the bigger markets, and they're not taking advantage of the revenue sharing, and they're just not spending money.
And here's wherein lies the other issue with it. In the NFL, if a team sucks for a few years, they keep getting high draft picks. Those draft picks turn out great very quickly. In baseball, draft picks sometimes take years.
Yes, 100%.
Years to kind of get to where they're at their prime. It's not like football and hockey and basketball where you can just turn around your franchise in a year or two.
Great point.
High draft picks. In baseball, I mean, let's face it, the Orioles, they've had top draft picks for years, and they still suck every single year.
Yeah, because you make the greatest point, because in the NFL, NBA, guys just get drafted and they're right into the big time, right? Well, baseball is different. You have high school kids getting drafted to play professional ball. They're getting paid. They're professionals, but they're playing at low A ball. It could take them, like you said, 6, 7, 8 years to develop and make it to the major leagues. It's apples and oranges. But on that note, I was actually thinking of something. Maybe one way to motivate these smaller market teams to spend the money is to take away their draft picks as punishment, right? If you're going to tax the big market teams, when the small market teams don't spend the money, take a draft pick. I don't know. We can go on about this all freaking day, but I'm going to choose not to. Let's talk a little bit of NFL, Jay. I know last week we were in a big thing about who's the NFL MVP. I just want to throw this out there, bro. I was saying how Mahomes is going to win it. I thought at the time last week, if you were to make the vote that day, I thought Tua was the MVP, and we were talking about Hurts versus Tua. Well, dude, all credit to Hurts after the performance last week and Tua having a bad game. Regardless of what Mahomes does, I think Jalen Hurts is the NFL MVP, and it's his to lose. Meaning, if he just continues to do what he's doing, he should just win the award. That's hands down done. The only way Jalen Hurts loses the MVP is if he spits the bit. It's his to lose. It's his to lose. I just wanted to throw it out there, dude. And did you happen to see the Rams last night? What did you think of the Baker Mayfield comeback?
I mean, first and foremost, I mean, kudos to Baker Mayfield, but like, I think it's more disgraceful to the Raiders, because how do you let that happen? First of all, the Raiders came into this year as one of those teams that you looked at what they got. They traded for Devontae Adams. They spent money on their defense. They had some good draft picks. Like, they were a team, and they got a new coach, McDaniel. You thought that they were an uprising team, right? Dude, the Raiders have sucked.
Awful.
Talk about a team spitting the bit.
Yeah,
the Raiders
crazy.
are the epitome of that. And I thought that to let Mayfield come in and do that after basically getting there on Wednesday.
Yeah, he had 2 days of practice to learn
I
to play.
mean, that to me is unacceptable. How do you let that happen, A, as a coach, and B, as the defense? But yes, it was a great comeback. I mean, but to me, to your point with Hurts, I mean, and I'm not being a homer. I think you're right. I think it is Hurts as the win, but I do.
No, it's Hurts is to lose.
I mean, it's Hurts as to lose, but I do think that Mahomes is still. It's Mahomes, and I know that you talked about that. Like, sometimes that name.
Well, yeah, he's going to win it because he's Pat Mahomes. And again, it's not like he doesn't have MVP numbers, but right now there are other guys that to me have bigger numbers, and Jalen Hurts is at the forefront right now. Again, just like I said last week, it could change. Next week it could change, but I just wanted to get into it slightly because we did talk about that last week.
It's just like power rankings, like, which I know you kind of gotten a little bit of, not a tip.
Yeah, I was in a little Twitter war with
little Twitter disagreements on it, but like, that's the thing with power rankings. They change week to week.
Exactly.
But when I do my power rankings, you have to look at all those factors. You can't just look at a record, because a team could be 10-0 and have 10 1-point win. And yes, a win is a win. But if that 10-1 team lost to the Dolphins, who are 9-1, and that loss was to the Dolphins, I'm just using it as an example.
You're just making it up. Yeah, I got you.
Then to me, the Dolphins should still be in that conversation for being the top team. But unfortunately, when people do power rankings, sometimes I think it's very narrow-minded. Like,
oh, it looks like Jay froze up. Anyway, I don't know where Jay went, but dude, I get what he was saying. But my main point here was that Jalen Hurts, it's his award to lose. He's the MVP as far as I'm concerned. Let's flip the script a little bit. We'll wait for Jay to get back here. Why don't we get into the picks of the week? Let's do it. Hopefully we get Jay back here. So I don't know what Jay's pick of the week was going to be, but we were talking about the new Godsmack that just, they released a couple singles over the last week or so. They have it, because they have a new album that's going to be coming out soon. The name of the album is called Lighting Up the Sky. It's not out yet. It's going to be released on February 24th, 2023. Yep, we officially lost Jason. But it's going to be coming out on February 24th, 2023. I don't know what Jason's pick of the week was going to be. I think it was going to be this Godsmack, because he had been sending me the songs. I love the songs. I don't want to steal Jay's thunder here, but the newest one that I think they just released today is called You and I. Dude, the riff is like Black Sabbath. It's an amazing, amazing riff. The other track they released, I think, a week ago is called Surrender. And I don't know if you're aware, but Godsmack has said that this is going to be their last album. Sully Erna has said that in multiple interviews. His thinking is that, the fans at this point, they want to go to a show and see the hits. Godsmack has made, 7 records now. They're going to be a touring band. He's not saying the band's going to break up. He just kind of thinks that there's really nothing more to say on records. He's back. What was your pick of the week, Jay? Because I kind of thought I said what I thought it was going to be. What was your pick of the week?
So my pick of the week is actually the 2 new tracks from Godsmack.
Oh, see, I thought it was going to be that, so I kind of went into it.
Yeah, so Godsmack has a brand new album coming out. It's actually due out in February, called Lighting Up the Sky. Apparently, according to Sully, who, for those of you who don't know, is the lead vocalist, this will be Godsmack's last full-length studio album. They will only be a touring band from now on, which I think, you and I talked about that earlier. It's kind of crap, but that's neither here nor there. We can get into that discussion after the fact.
I'm not trying to criticize and say it's just crap. I just am disappointed personally. I'd rather see them keep making records. You know, I just the records that they're putting out are still as good as anything they've ever done. So why not keep putting them out? It's not like Motley Crue. Motley Crue, all the new music to me that they've released in the last decade or more has just not been that good. So I could do without a Motley Crue record, and I could still go see him in concert and love hearing all the old hits, although Vince doesn't sound any good anymore. I'm saying in hypothetical terms. But Godsmack, the records they're putting out are awesome.
I mean, honestly, the freaking 2 new tracks that I've heard are phenomenal. Like, I would put them in the top, I'm not saying top 5, but
the one track I would. The one track I would, You and I love it.
I mean, You and I, when I first put it on, and it's funny because I had the same thought, but I just didn't say it to you. You said it to me. But it's definitely a Black Sabbath vibe right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
that's a Tony Iommi.
Exactly. Yep. It's like it's definitely laden with that Sabbath type tone. And I've always thought that Godsmack had a Black Sabbath type. You know,
absolutely.
Some of that
definitely
doomy,
have a heavy Black Sabbath
doom, metal type, aura to them. The other track is called Surrender, and to me, it's very heartfelt. If you listen to the lyrics, I don't know what he's trying to get at, but it's definitely something that I'm assuming. I mean, I'd have to read it, but you know how you always hear a song and you think, oh, that's definitely heartfelt lyrics. I don't know if it's from him or whoever wrote the song. I'm sure maybe he's the main songwriter, but it's definitely got that heartfelt lyrics, and it's definitely one of Godsmack's. It's got a signature sound. So I love both tracks. I'm looking forward to the album. That's my pick of the week.
That's a great pick of the week, dude. It really is. And I just want to continue the point I made. Dude, Godsmack's never been one of my favorite bands, but they're a band that I dig. I have no problem with Godsmack. And I really do believe they're very consistent. The records they put out are all good records. We got a friend of the show, Beard to Knowledge, checking in. Phil Stifle, if you haven't checked out his podcast, check it out. He's on DSM Media, Trending in the AM. Thank you for checking in, Phil. But Godsmack's been very consistent with the material they put out. It sounds like Godsmack. They do what they do. But, one of the things I was reading, when we were talking about how Godsmack's never going to tour, I'm never going to put a record out. They're going to just be a touring band. One of the things that Sully said in the interview that I read was that he has never said when Godsmack's been putting a new record out that he thinks that the record they're putting out is the best one they've ever done. He's never said that. But on this one, he said it. He thinks this is the best record Godsmack has ever done. And from the 2 tracks I've heard, whether or not I think it's going to be the best record or not isn't really important, but I do think it's going to be an awesome record. And the track You and I is awesome. But that being said, I'm going to throw this out there, dude. It's hard. These guys are older than you think. Dude, their guitar player is 60 years old. 59 years old. You would never think that the guys in Godsmack are that old. Dude, Sully's 55, 56 years old. Let me see how Tony Rambola. Yeah, he's 58.
They were probably around before.
They were 30 years old when they hit in 98.
But I'm saying they probably had other projects that you never really knew because
they were an up and coming band in Boston, and then they made it. But I'm just saying they're not young guys as you would think. I mean, think about it. In 10 years, they're going to be almost 70. You wouldn't think of that when you think of Godsmack.
No, but I think you used the perfect word to describe them: consistent. And that's what I love about them, because you're right. There's too many bands out there that aren't consistent. Even like Megadeth, and I'm a diehard Megadeth fan, but they're not consistent. I like consistency because to me, at least if you have consistency, you know that the product is going to be above average. Every time. Every single album is going to be good.
Yeah, well, I was the point I was kind of making was kind of going along with why they might say they're not going to make records anymore. They're not, spring chickens. That's all. But I would.
Well, I get that,
and I'd like them to see them making records.
I didn't realize they were that old. So.
Yeah, no, I did, but I knew they were mid 50s. Obviously, it's not much difference between 54, 55, and 58, 59. But it just when you're that close to 60, it's something about it just seems older. You know what I mean? But that being said,
you and I are getting closer to 50.
Don't announce our age on the show. There's no reason to do that. Come on. Anyway, that being said, my pick of the week, because I thought what you were going to do was the Godsmack stuff coming out. So I went back and, revisited Godsmack a little bit. And, dude, an album that I really always have enjoyed listening to. Let me start by saying, again, Godsmack was never one of my favorite bands, but they're a band that I dig, right? But I will say this. They're one of the best live bands I've ever seen. Godsmack puts on a show. They sound thick when you see them live. They have a thick sound, great stage presence, and they bring it. They have energy. They rock. I'm telling you, they're awesome. They get the crowd involved. So my pick of the week is the Godsmack live album, the only live album to my knowledge they've ever done, live and inspired. It came out back in 2012. It's a 2-disc set. The first set is a concert. It's it's got all the hits you'd expect to hear: Straight Outta Line, Awake, Keep Away, whatever, I Stand Alone. But what makes it great, besides hearing the live stuff, is the second disc, which is the inspired side. So the first disc is live, and then the second disc is inspired, which is covers tunes that inspired them. And some of the covers that they chose might shock you a little bit, because it's not like real heavy stuff. They did Come Together by the Beatles, which is awesome. They did Rocky Mountain Way by Joe Walsh, which is awesome. But my two favorite covers that they did are the Nothing Else Matters cover, which is a haunting piano version with really just the piano, some background keyboards, and Sully doing the vocal. And my ultimate favorite on here, Time, the Pink Floyd cover from Dark Side of the Moon. Dude, they do an awesome cover of Pink Floyd's Time. So if you haven't ever listened to Live and Inspired by Godsmack, check it out, because you can get a kind of an idea of what they're like live, and you can hear some really cool covers that they did a nice job with that you really wouldn't expect Godsmack to do. So that's my pick of the week, dude.
I'm gonna check it out after the show, dude. You got me.
Yeah, if you've never listened to it, definitely check it out. Yeah, you're inspired. Anyway, brother, it's been a great show. We want to thank everybody out there for checking us out this week. We hope you enjoyed the show. As always, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Sports and Metal. You can follow us on TikTok at Real Sports and Metal. Make sure you visit our website, www.sportsandmetal.com. There you can get your fix on all things sports and metal. Again, that's www.sportsandmetal.com. You can find old episodes of this podcast and our sister podcast, And the Gavel Will Rock. You can also check out our blog. We actually released a new blog post this past week. We ranked the top 10 Wasp albums from worst to first. You definitely want to check it out. You might be surprised with the pick we put number one. I don't want to say too much. What's that, Jay?
Not to interject, but to kind of keep on that theme, we will be dropping our top albums of the year. That will be coming very soon.
Yes, we will be dropping. Jay and I are each going to pick our top 5 hard rock and heavy metal albums from 2022. So it's going to be 10 total records, 5 from Jay, 5 from me. Will we have the same pick? Possibly. We don't know. But you're definitely going to want to check that blog out. That's going to be coming out soon. So again, go to www.sportsandmetal.com. Before we let you go, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors once again. Make sure you visit La Terrain Watches. These are handcrafted watches at an excellent price point, and there's no better time than now to check out their website and buy a watch, because it's Christmas, it's Hanukkah, it's time to check out this website and buy a family member or a loved one a beautiful watch, or maybe treat yourself. I'm telling you, you're not going to regret it. Go to laterrain.com. That's LA-TOURAINE.com. Use our promo code SNM. That's the letters SNM, as in Sports and Metal. You're going to save 10% off your purchase. Tell them Sports and Metal sent you. And before we go, we also want to thank BetUS. Use our promo code. You can check out the link below me right there. It's 125% bonus on your first bet. Check them out. Sports and Metal is going to send you there. BetUS.com. And, that's another show, Jay. It's a wrap. Hope everybody out there enjoyed it. Make sure you check us out on social media. Again, visit our website. Shoot us comments. You can DM us on Twitter. Anything you'd like us to talk about on the show, sports or metal related. We want to hear your thoughts. Anything you'd like us to bring to the table. Any questions you may have. As always, thanks for watching. Rock on.
Peace out.
And that's our show. Tune in next time for more Sports and Metal with Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage. Ooh, yeah! Got something to say? Hit us up at sportsandmetal0423 at yahoo.com or on Twitter at sports.